Question 1. Stakeholder feedback indicates a growing frustration with the current case resolution times within the IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. Environment, with some demanding immediate, albeit potentially superficial, fixes to expedite processing. However, other stakeholders are concerned about the long-term implications of rushed solutions on data integrity and audit trails. As a specialist, which approach best balances these competing demands while adhering to best practices for case management? Option A. Prioritize implementing the quickest technical fixes suggested by the most vocal stakeholders to immediately address the perceived delays, deferring any deeper analysis of root causes or long-term impacts. Option B. Focus on optimizing the system's performance through aggressive resource allocation and technical tuning, assuming that improved performance will inherently satisfy all stakeholder concerns without direct engagement on specific resolution time issues. Option C. Conduct a thorough analysis of the root causes of delays. Evaluate multiple solution options based on their impact on resolution time, data integrity, and audit trail compliance, and facilitate a collaborative decision with key stakeholders to select the most balanced approach. Option D. Implement a phased approach where initial quick fixes are deployed to alleviate immediate pressure, followed by a separate, longer-term project to address underlying issues, without a clear initial consensus on the overall strategy. The correct answer is C. Conduct a thorough analysis of the root causes of delays. Evaluate multiple solution options based on their impact on resolution time, data integrity, and audit trail compliance, and facilitate a collaborative decision with key stakeholders to select the most balanced approach. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in case management where conflicting stakeholder priorities can impede efficient and effective case resolution. The core difficulty lies in balancing the immediate need for a quick resolution with the long-term implications of the chosen approach, especially when resources are constrained. A hasty decision might satisfy one stakeholder but alienate others or lead to suboptimal outcomes, while an overly cautious approach could delay critical actions and increase overall risk. The specialist must navigate these competing interests while adhering to established best practices and regulatory guidelines relevant to IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured decision-making framework that prioritizes objective analysis and stakeholder alignment. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible case management, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks emphasizing transparency, fairness, and due diligence. By gathering comprehensive data, assessing various solution options against defined criteria, including impact on different stakeholder groups and alignment with business objectives, and facilitating a collaborative decision-making process, the specialist ensures that the chosen path is well justified, understood, and supported by key parties. This methodical approach minimizes the risk of arbitrary or biased decisions and promotes sustainable solutions. Incorrect approaches analysis. Prioritizing the loudest stakeholders' immediate demands without considering the broader impact represents a failure in objective decision-making. This can lead to regulatory breaches if the chosen solution violates established policies or creates an unfair advantage for one party. It also demonstrates a lack of due diligence and can result in long-term operational inefficiencies or increased costs, which may be scrutinized under compliance audits. Implementing a solution based solely on the perceived ease of technical implementation, without a thorough assessment of its alignment with business needs or stakeholder requirements, is also problematic. This can lead to a solution that is technically sound but functionally inadequate, failing to address the root cause of the issue or meet the expectations of those affected. This can be seen as a dereliction of duty in ensuring the case management system effectively serves its intended purpose, potentially leading to non-compliance with operational standards. Focusing exclusively on minimizing immediate resource expenditure without a comprehensive risk assessment or consideration of long-term consequences is a short-sighted approach. This can result in a solution that is cheaper in the short term but more costly to maintain or rectify later, potentially leading to regulatory noncompliance if the system's integrity or security is compromised due to inadequate investment. It also fails to demonstrate prudent financial stewardship, a principle often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory oversight. Professional reasoning. Professionals in case management should employ a structured decision-making framework. This typically involves 1. Problem definition, clearly understanding the issue and its scope. 2. Information gathering, collecting all relevant data including stakeholder input and system performance metrics. 3. Option generation, brainstorming potential solutions. 4. Option evaluation, assessing each option against predefined criteria e.g. effectiveness, efficiency, cost, risk, stakeholder impact, regulatory compliance. 5. Decision making, selecting the best option based on the evaluation. 6. Implementation and monitoring, putting the chosen solution into practice and tracking its effectiveness. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational goals and regulatory expectations. Question 2. Analysis of how to best implement a critical business decision within an IBM Case Foundation V5.2 solution, where the decision depends on a combination of case attributes, external data feeds, and predefined business policies, while ensuring auditability and compliance with financial regulations. Option A. Utilize IBM Case Foundation's integrated decision services and rule sets to define and execute the decision logic directly within the case management workflow. Option B. Implement the decision logic using a series of conditional statements directly within the case type's event handlers without a centralized rule management system. Option C. Embed complex decision logic within custom Java code deployed as part of the case solution, relying on internal documentation for rule explanations. Option D. Offload the decision-making process to a separate, manually operated system that provides results to Case Foundation via email or manual data entry. Correct answer is A. Utilize IBM Case Foundation's integrated decision services and rule sets to define and execute the decision logic directly within the case management workflow. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in IBM Case Foundation V5.2 implementations where a business process requires a decision to be made based on multiple, potentially conflicting criteria. The challenge lies in ensuring that the decision-making logic is not only technically sound within the Case Foundation environment, but also aligns with the underlying business rules and regulatory compliance requirements. The complexity arises from the need to balance efficiency, accuracy, and adherence to established policies, especially when dealing with sensitive data or critical business functions. A poorly designed decision-making framework can lead to incorrect outcomes, operational inefficiencies, and potential compliance breaches. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging IBM Case Foundation's built-in decision-making capabilities, specifically through the use of Business Process Manager, BPM decision services, or rule sets. This method is best professional practice because it directly integrates decision logic into the case management workflow, ensuring that decisions are made contextually within the ongoing case. It allows for the definition of clear, auditable rules that can be easily modified and maintained by business analysts or subject matter experts without requiring extensive developer intervention. This approach promotes transparency, consistency, and compliance by making the decision-making process explicit and traceable within the case history. Regulatory adherence is achieved by ensuring that the defined rules reflect all applicable legal and policy requirements, and that the system's execution of these rules is logged for audit purposes. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to hard-code decision logic directly into custom Java code or scripts within the Case Foundation solution. This is professionally unacceptable because it creates a black box where the decision logic is hidden from business users and difficult to audit or update. It violates principles of maintainability and agility, as any change to the business rules would necessitate code modifications and redeployment, increasing the risk of errors and delays. From a regulatory perspective, this lack of transparency makes it challenging to demonstrate compliance with rules that require clear justification for decisions. Another incorrect approach would be to rely on external, disconnected systems or manual processes to make critical decisions within the case. This introduces significant latency, increases the risk of data inconsistencies, and creates a fragmented audit trail. Decisions made outside the Case Foundation workflow are not inherently linked to the case context, making it difficult to track the rationale and evidence supporting the decision. This fragmentation can lead to compliance failures, as it becomes impossible to provide a complete and accurate record of how a case was processed and why specific decisions were made, which is often a requirement for regulatory bodies. Professional reasoning. Professionals implementing decision-making frameworks in IBM Case Foundation V5. 2 should adopt a structured approach. First, thoroughly understand and document the business requirements and all relevant regulatory and policy constraints. Second, evaluate the capabilities of IBM Case Foundation to implement these requirements, prioritizing built-in features like decision services and rule sets for their transparency, maintainability, and auditability. Third, design the decision logic in a modular and testable manner, ensuring that it can be easily validated against expected outcomes. Fourth, implement robust logging and auditing mechanisms to capture all decision points and their justifications. Finally, involve business stakeholders throughout the design and testing phases to ensure the implemented logic accurately reflects business needs and complies with all external mandates. This systematic process minimizes risks and ensures the solution is both effective and compliant. Question 3. Benchmark analysis indicates that the efficiency of case resolution within a particular business unit has plateaued. The team lead is considering implementing a new approach to decision-making for complex case escalations to improve throughput. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices for ensuring both efficiency and defensibility in decision-making within a regulated environment? Option A. Adopting a standardized decision-making matrix that outlines specific criteria for escalation, predefined decision pathways based on those criteria, and a clear audit trail for each decision. Option B. Prioritizing rapid decision-making by allowing the first available senior team member to approve or reject escalations without further review, focusing solely on reducing backlog. Option C. Implementing a system where decisions are made through informal team discussions and consensus, with outcomes recorded only in summary notes. Option D. Empowering senior team members to make escalation decisions based on their extensive personal experience and intuition, with minimal documentation required. The correct answer is A. Adopting a standardized decision-making matrix that outlines specific criteria for escalation, predefined decision pathways based on those criteria, and a clear audit trail for each decision. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the need for efficient case processing with the imperative to adhere to established decision-making frameworks and regulatory guidelines. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that decisions, particularly those impacting case outcomes or resource allocation, are not arbitrary but are grounded in a structured, defensible process. The IBM Case Foundation V5. 2 specialists must navigate the potential for bias, oversight, or inconsistency that can arise from less rigorous decision-making methods. The correct approach, which involves a structured decision-making framework that incorporates defined criteria, stakeholder input, and a clear audit trail, represents best professional practice. This aligns with the principles of good governance and operational integrity expected within regulated environments. Specifically, it ensures transparency, accountability, and fairness in how cases are managed and decisions are made. Regulatory frameworks, while not explicitly detailed for this exam's jurisdiction, which is assumed to be a general professional context without specific country mandates for this question, implicitly require that business processes are robust, auditable, and minimize risk. A structured framework provides this necessary rigor. An incorrect approach that relies solely on individual experience or intuition, without a documented process, fails to meet these professional standards. This can lead to inconsistent outcomes, difficulty in justifying decisions if challenged, and an increased risk of bias influencing judgment. From a regulatory perspective, such an approach would likely be considered deficient in terms of auditability and control. Another incorrect approach, focusing only on speed without considering the quality or impact of the decision, also presents significant professional and potential regulatory risks. This can result in errors, customer dissatisfaction, and a failure to meet compliance obligations, all of which are unacceptable in a professional setting. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that includes clearly defining the problem or decision to be made, identifying and evaluating potential options based on predefined criteria, assessing the risks and benefits of each option, consulting relevant stakeholders, documenting the decision-making process and the rationale for the chosen course of action, and establishing a mechanism for review and feedback. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are well considered, justifiable, and aligned with organizational objectives and any applicable professional standards. Question 4. Benchmark analysis indicates that a critical business unit, facing intense market pressure, has independently procured and begun configuring IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. To address an urgent workflow automation need, bypassing the standard IT change management and security review processes. The business unit leadership argues that their internal IT expertise is sufficient and that the formal process would cause unacceptable delays. As an IBM Case Foundation specialist, what is the most appropriate course of action to ensure both business agility and organizational compliance? Option A. Inform the business unit that their actions are non-compliant and instruct them to dismantle their current configuration and await a formal IT-led deployment project. Option B. Engage with the business unit to understand their specific requirements and risks, and then guide them through an expedited but compliant deployment process that includes necessary security and governance checks. Option C. Immediately halt the business unit's independent configuration and mandate that they follow the full organizational change management and security review process before any further deployment activities. Option D. Provide the business unit with additional technical documentation and best practice guides for IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Allowing them to proceed independently while offering ad hoc support if requested. The correct answer is C. Immediately halt the business unit's independent configuration and mandate that they follow the full organizational change management and security review process before any further deployment activities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise content management where a business unit, driven by perceived immediate needs and a desire for agility, bypasses established governance processes for deploying a new case management solution. The professional challenge lies in balancing the business unit's demand for speed with the organization's overarching need for compliance, security, and data integrity, as mandated by IBM's best practices and potentially internal IT policies. The risk of shadow IT data leakage and non-compliance with regulatory requirements, if applicable to the specific industry and jurisdiction, though not explicitly stated for this exam scope, is significant. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves engaging with the business unit to understand their requirements and then guiding them through the established change management and deployment processes. This aligns with best practices for IBM Case Foundation v5, 2 implementation, which emphasizes a structured approach to solution deployment. By involving the IT governance and security teams, the organization ensures that the new solution adheres to security protocols, data privacy standards, and integration requirements with existing systems. This proactive engagement prevents potential security vulnerabilities, data silos, and compliance breaches, ultimately safeguarding the organization's assets and reputation. It fosters collaboration and ensures that the deployed solution is robust, secure, and maintainable. Incorrect approach is analysis. Allowing the business unit to proceed with an independent deployment without IT oversight represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses critical security reviews, potentially exposing sensitive data to unauthorized access or breaches. It also violates principles of good IT governance, leading to unmanaged systems that are difficult to support, update, or integrate, creating technical debt and increasing operational risk. Furthermore, it undermines the organization's ability to maintain a consistent and compliant IT environment, which could have implications for data integrity and auditability. Failing to provide adequate resources or support for the business unit's deployment, while seemingly a neutral stance, can also lead to suboptimal outcomes. Without proper guidance and technical assistance, the business unit might implement the solution in a way that is insecure, inefficient, or incompatible with other systems, leading to the same risks as a completely unmanaged deployment. Ignoring the business unit's request entirely, without attempting to understand their needs or offer alternative solutions, is a failure of service and collaboration. While it avoids the risks of an unmanaged deployment, it can lead to frustration, decreased productivity, and the potential for the business unit to seek even less controlled workarounds. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a collaborative and governance-aware approach. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the business need. Actively listen to the business unit's requirements and the urgency behind them. 2. Assessing the risks. Evaluate the potential security, compliance, and operational risks associated with the proposed independent deployment. 3. Engaging stakeholders, involve IT governance, security, and relevant business stakeholders in the discussion. 4. Guiding through established processes, advocate for and facilitate the use of the organization's approved change management and deployment procedures. 5. Proposing solutions. If the standard process is perceived as too slow, explore ways to expedite it or offer alternative compliant solutions that meet the business need within acceptable risk parameters. 6. Documenting decisions. Ensure all decisions and their justifications are properly documented. Question 5. Research into the implementation of a new customer onboarding process within IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. A financial services firm needs to ensure that all customer personally identifiable information, PI, is handled in strict accordance with the relevant financial services data protection regulations. The project team is under pressure to launch the new process quickly. What is the most appropriate approach to ensure compliance with data protection requirements throughout the case lifecycle? Option A. Hardcode sensitive PII directly into the case type definitions and business process steps to streamline data entry and retrieval, assuming that the overall network security will protect the data. Option B. Prioritize rapid deployment by skipping the formal data classification review and implementing only basic user authentication, with the understanding that security enhancements can be added post-launch. Option C. Proceed with the implementation, relying on end-user training to educate staff on handling PII securely, as the system's default security settings are assumed to be adequate for financial services data. Option D. Implement robust role-based access controls and data masking techniques within IBM Case Foundation, ensuring that only authorized personnel can view or modify sensitive PII, and conduct a thorough data classification review before deployment. The correct answer is D. Implement robust role-based access controls and data masking techniques within IBM Case Foundation, ensuring that only authorized personnel can view or modify sensitive PII, and conduct a thorough data classification review before deployment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge in managing sensitive customer data within an IBM Case Foundation v5.2 environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the business need for efficient case processing with the stringent regulatory requirements for data privacy and security, specifically under the framework relevant to the C2070-982 exam. The pressure to deliver a functional solution quickly can lead to overlooking critical compliance aspects. Professionals must exercise careful judgment to ensure that any implementation adheres to established data protection principles and organizational policies, preventing potential breaches and regulatory penalties. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review and adherence to the data classification policies and security protocols defined by the relevant regulatory framework. This means understanding what constitutes sensitive data, how it should be handled, and what security measures are mandated for its protection within the IBM Case Foundation system. Implementing role-based access controls, data masking or encryption where appropriate, and audit logging are key components of this best practice. This approach ensures that the system is designed and implemented in a compliant manner from the outset, minimizing risk and demonstrating due diligence in protecting customer information. This aligns with the principles of data minimization and purpose limitation, which are fundamental to most data protection regulations. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to proceed with the implementation without a formal data classification review, assuming that default security settings are sufficient. This is a regulatory failure because it bypasses the mandated process of identifying and protecting sensitive data according to its classification level. It violates the principle of accountability, as the organization cannot demonstrate that it has taken appropriate steps to safeguard specific types of data. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize immediate functionality over security by hard-coding sensitive data directly into case types or business process definitions, without considering access controls or encryption. This represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. It exposes sensitive data unnecessarily, increasing the risk of unauthorized access and breaches. This directly contravenes data protection principles that require data to be processed securely and only by authorized personnel. A third incorrect approach is to rely solely on end-user training to manage data security, without implementing technical controls within IBM Case Foundation. While training is important, it is not a substitute for robust technical safeguards. This approach fails to meet regulatory requirements for implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure a level of security appropriate to the risk. It places an undue burden on individuals and is an insufficient defense against sophisticated threats or accidental data exposure. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, starting with a comprehensive understanding of the data involved and the applicable regulatory landscape. Before designing or implementing any solution within IBM Case Foundation, a data classification exercise should be conducted. This should be followed by a design phase that incorporates security controls directly into the case types and business processes, aligned with the data classification. Regular security reviews and audits are essential to ensure ongoing compliance. The decision-making process should always prioritize data protection and regulatory adherence, even if it requires additional time or resources during the initial implementation. Question 6. The assessment process reveals that a new regulatory mandate requires the capture and validation of specific financial disclosure information for all active cases. This information must be recorded and verified at the point of case creation and updated whenever a case is modified. The existing IBM Case Foundation v5.2 solution currently lacks fields and logic to accommodate these new requirements. What is the most appropriate approach to integrate these new regulatory obligations into the existing case management system? Option A. Modify the existing case type to include the new financial disclosure fields and implement corresponding business rules for validation and data integrity. Option B. Add the new financial disclosure fields to the case type without implementing any validation rules or workflow changes. Option C. Implement a manual process where case workers record the financial disclosure information in separate spreadsheets and attach them to the case. Option D. Develop a separate external application to track the new financial disclosure information and link it to the case records. The correct answer is A. Modify the existing case type to include the new financial disclosure fields and implement corresponding business rules for validation and data integrity. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in case management, where a business process needs to adapt to evolving regulatory requirements. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for immediate compliance with the potential impact on existing case workflows and user experience. A hasty or incomplete implementation could lead to non-compliance, operational disruptions, or increased manual effort for case workers. Careful judgment is required to ensure the solution is both effective and sustainable. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a solution that involves modifying the existing case type to incorporate the new regulatory fields and associated validation rules represents best professional practice. This approach ensures that the new requirements are integrated directly into the core business process, maintaining data integrity and enforcing compliance at the point of data entry or modification. IBM Case Foundation's design principles support this by allowing for schema extensions and business rule integration within case types. This method aligns with the principle of compliance by design, embedding regulatory adherence into the system's functionality. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to create a separate, standalone application or system to track the new regulatory information. This creates data silos, increases the risk of data inconsistencies, and requires duplicate data entry, leading to inefficiencies and potential compliance gaps. It fails to leverage the integrated nature of IBM Case Foundation and undermines the goal of a unified case management system. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual processes and external documentation to manage the new regulatory requirements. This is highly susceptible to human error, is not scalable, and provides no auditable trail within the case management system. It directly contravenes the principles of automated compliance and efficient case processing, and would likely lead to significant regulatory breaches due to lack of systematic enforcement. A third incorrect approach would be to simply add new fields to the case type without implementing any validation rules or workflow modifications. While this technically captures the data, it does not enforce compliance. Case workers could enter invalid data, or the new information might not be used effectively in subsequent process steps, rendering the change superficial and failing to meet the spirit of the regulatory mandate. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such challenges by first thoroughly understanding the new regulatory requirements and their implications for the existing case management processes. This involves engaging with business stakeholders and compliance officers. The next step is to evaluate how these requirements can be best integrated into the IBM Case Foundation solution, prioritizing approaches that maintain data integrity, enforce compliance through system logic, and minimize disruption to users. A phased implementation with thorough testing is also crucial. Question 7. Quality control measures reveal that a critical case type in IBM Case Foundation v5.2, currently in production, requires modifications to accommodate new regulatory reporting requirements. The proposed changes involve adding new data fields and altering the workflow logic. What is the most appropriate and compliant approach to implement these modifications? Option A. Create a new version of the case type with the required modifications, thoroughly test it in a development environment, and then plan a controlled deployment to production, including data migration strategies and user training. Option B. Develop the modifications in a separate, isolated environment, but deploy them directly to the production environment without extensive testing or a rollback plan. Option C. Implement the changes in a development environment, and then manually migrate data from the production environment to the development environment for testing before deploying to production. Option D. Directly modify the existing production case type to incorporate the new data fields and workflow logic, assuming the changes are straightforward. The correct answer is A. Create a new version of the case type with the required modifications, thoroughly test it in a development environment, and then plan a controlled deployment to production, including data migration strategies and user training. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in case management where the initial design of a case type might not fully anticipate evolving business needs or regulatory changes. The core difficulty lies in balancing the need for efficient case processing with the imperative to maintain data integrity and compliance. Modifying a live case type without proper consideration can lead to data corruption, process disruptions, and potential breaches of regulatory requirements, especially concerning data retention and audit trails. The specialist must navigate technical feasibility, business impact, and adherence to established governance frameworks. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, phased implementation that prioritizes thorough testing and validation. This aligns with best practices in software development and change management, which are implicitly supported by regulatory frameworks emphasizing system reliability and data accuracy. By creating a new version of the case type, the specialist ensures that the existing operational case type remains unaffected during the development and testing of the new functionality. This allows for comprehensive testing in a controlled environment, minimizing the risk of introducing errors into production. The subsequent controlled deployment, including data migration strategies and user training, further mitigates risks and ensures compliance with any data handling regulations that mandate accuracy and completeness. This methodical approach upholds the principle of least privilege and change control, essential for maintaining system integrity and auditability. Correct approaches analysis. Directly modifying the existing case type without a versioning or testing strategy is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. It violates principles of change management and risk mitigation, which are foundational to maintaining reliable systems. Such an action could lead to data inconsistencies, rendering audit trails unreliable and potentially violating regulations that require accurate record keeping. Furthermore, it bypasses necessary approval processes and testing protocols, increasing the likelihood of system failure or unintended consequences. Implementing the changes directly in the production environment without prior testing or a rollback plan is also a critical failure. This demonstrates a disregard for system stability and business continuity. It exposes the organization to immediate operational risks and potential data loss or corruption. From a regulatory perspective, this approach undermines the ability to demonstrate due diligence in system maintenance and data management, potentially leading to non-compliance with data integrity and security standards. Developing the changes in a separate, isolated environment, but failing to plan for data migration or user impact analysis before deploying to production is another flawed approach. While the development itself might be contained, the lack of consideration for how existing data will be handled or how users will adapt to the changes creates significant risks. This can lead to data loss during migration, user errors, and a breakdown in process efficiency, all of which can have regulatory implications if they impact the accuracy or accessibility of case information. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to change management. This involves identifying potential impacts, assessing risks, and implementing controls to mitigate them. For system modifications, a phased approach is crucial. Design, develop in a non-production environment, test rigorously, plan for deployment, including data migration and user training, deploy and monitor. Adherence to established change control policies and seeking necessary approvals are paramount. In situations involving live systems, prioritizing the integrity and availability of existing data and processes is a primary ethical and professional responsibility. Question 8. Which approach would be most appropriate for integrating IBM Case Foundation v5? 2. With an external financial reporting system to ensure secure, auditable, and efficient data exchange, while adhering to established data governance policies. Option A. Rely exclusively on manual data entry and periodic file transfers between IBM Case Foundation and the external financial reporting system. Option B. Develop custom scripts that directly access and modify the external system's database, bypassing the Case Foundation workflow for data transfer. Option C. Utilize IBM Case Foundation's native integration APIs and connectors to establish a secure and auditable data flow, managed within the platform's governance framework. Option D. Implement a point-to-point integration using custom code, without leveraging middleware or the platform's built-in integration features. The correct answer is C. Utilize IBM Case Foundation's native integration APIs and connectors to establish a secure and auditable data flow, managed within the platform's governance framework. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in case management, where a business process requires integration with external systems. The complexity arises from ensuring that the integration not only functions technically, but also adheres to the established regulatory framework and internal governance policies of IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. The need to maintain data integrity, security, and auditability while enabling seamless data exchange with a third-party system demands a thorough understanding of both the technical capabilities of IBM Case Foundation and the relevant compliance requirements. The challenge lies in selecting an integration strategy that balances efficiency, scalability, and regulatory adherence. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging IBM Case Foundation's built-in integration capabilities, specifically through its provided APIs and connectors, to interact with the external system. This method is best professional practice because it aligns with the intended design and architecture of IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Utilizing these native tools ensures that the integration is managed within the framework's governance, security, and audit logging mechanisms. This facilitates easier maintenance, upgrades, and troubleshooting, as the integration points are standardized and documented within the IBM ecosystem. Furthermore, it allows for the application of security policies and data transformation rules directly within Case Foundation, ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations and internal data handling policies. This approach promotes a robust, secure, and auditable integration that is less prone to breaking with system updates. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach would be to bypass IBM Case Foundation's integration framework and directly manipulate the external system's database, or use custom scripts that bypass the case management workflow. This is professionally unacceptable as it creates a black box integration that is difficult to monitor, audit, and secure. It bypasses the built-in security controls and audit trails of Case Foundation, potentially leading to data corruption, unauthorized access, and non-compliance with data governance regulations. Such an approach also makes the system brittle and prone to failure during upgrades or changes to either system. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual data entry or file transfers between the systems. While seemingly simple, this method is highly inefficient, prone to human error, and lacks real-time data synchronization. It creates significant delays in case processing, increases operational costs, and makes it impossible to maintain an accurate and auditable record of data flow, violating principles of data integrity and operational efficiency expected within a regulated environment. A third incorrect approach would be to implement a point-to-point integration using custom code without considering the broader architectural implications or the use of middleware. This can lead to a complex web of dependencies that are difficult to manage and scale. It also often bypasses the robust error handling, logging, and security features provided by IBM Case Foundation, increasing the risk of integration failures and security vulnerabilities. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach such integration challenges by first thoroughly understanding the business requirements and the regulatory landscape governing the data being exchanged. They should then consult the IBM Case Foundation V5 documentation to identify the recommended and supported integration patterns and tools. A risk assessment should be conducted for each potential integration strategy, evaluating its impact on security, data integrity, auditability, scalability, and maintainability. The decision should prioritize solutions that leverage the native capabilities of IBM Case Foundation, ensuring that the integration is managed, monitored, and secured within the platform's framework. This systematic approach, prioritizing compliance and robust design, is crucial for successful and sustainable case management solutions. Question 9. The review process indicates that a critical piece of evidence, previously unavailable, has surfaced just as a case is scheduled for final disposition. The case manager must decide how to proceed, balancing the need for timely resolution with the imperative of an accurate and fair outcome. Which of the following actions best upholds professional responsibility and the integrity of the case management process? Option A. Proceed with the scheduled disposition based on the information available at the time, and document the existence of the new evidence for potential future review if the case is appealed. Option B. Halt the disposition process, formally reopen the case for review, and ensure the new evidence is thoroughly evaluated and integrated into the decision-making before proceeding. Option C. Immediately incorporate the new evidence into the case file and proceed with the final disposition, assuming it does not fundamentally alter the existing assessment. Option D. Inform the parties involved that new evidence has emerged and allow them to decide whether the disposition should be postponed. The correct answer is C. Immediately incorporate the new evidence into the case file and proceed with the final disposition, assuming it does not fundamentally alter the existing assessment. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in case management where a critical piece of information, vital for accurate case assessment and resolution, is discovered late in the process. The professional is faced with a conflict between adhering to established procedural timelines and ensuring the integrity and fairness of the case outcome. The pressure to meet deadlines can tempt a shortcut, but the potential for an incorrect or unjust decision due to incomplete information necessitates careful consideration. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes the accuracy and fairness of the case outcome by acknowledging the new information and initiating a review. This aligns with the fundamental principles of due process and responsible case management, which mandate that all relevant information be considered before a final determination. In the context of IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. This would involve leveraging the platform's capabilities to reopen or reevaluate the case, ensuring that the new data is incorporated into the workflow and decision-making process. This upholds the integrity of the case management system and the decisions it facilitates, preventing potential errors and subsequent remediation efforts. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves proceeding with the decision based on the existing information, disregarding the newly discovered critical data. This is a direct violation of professional responsibility and ethical case management. It risks an erroneous outcome, potentially leading to legal challenges, reputational damage, and a failure to serve the intended purpose of the case management system. From a regulatory standpoint, it could be seen as negligence or a failure to exercise due diligence, depending on the specific governing regulations for the industry and jurisdiction. Another incorrect approach is to attempt to retroactively insert the information without a formal review or reevaluation process. This could lead to data integrity issues within the case management system, potentially bypassing audit trails and validation checks. It might also create inconsistencies in the case history, making it difficult to track the evolution of the decision-making process. This undermines the transparency and accountability inherent in a well-managed case system. A third incorrect approach is to dismiss the new information as insignificant without proper assessment. This is a failure of critical thinking and due diligence. The professional has a responsibility to evaluate the potential impact of all information, especially when it is flagged as critical. Ignoring it without a thorough review is a dereliction of duty and can lead to the same negative consequences as proceeding with incomplete data. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a decision-making framework that emphasizes thoroughness and adherence to established procedures, even when faced with time constraints. This involves 1. Recognizing and acknowledging new critical information. 2. Assessing the potential impact of this information on the case. 3. Following established protocols for incorporating new information, which may include reopening or re-evaluating the case within the IBM Case Foundation v5.2 system. 4. Documenting all steps taken and decisions made. 5. Communicating any delays or changes in process to relevant stakeholders. This structured approach ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with best professional practices and any applicable regulatory requirements. Question 10. The analysis reveals that a financial services firm is implementing IBM Case Foundation v5.2 to streamline its customer onboarding process, which involves the collection and processing of significant amounts of personal data. The project team is concerned about ensuring that the solution adheres to the UK's regulatory framework for data protection and financial conduct. Which of the following approaches best ensures compliance with these regulations? Option A. Focus primarily on the speed and efficiency of the customer onboarding process, with regulatory compliance being a secondary consideration to be addressed after the system is live. Option B. Design the Case Foundation v5.2 solution to collect all available customer data points to provide a comprehensive client profile, and rely on standard security features of the platform to protect this data. Option C. Conduct a thorough data protection impact assessment (DPIA) to identify all personal data processed by the Case Foundation v5.2 solution, map its lifecycle, and implement specific technical and organizational measures, including access controls and encryption, to align with UK GDPR and FCA requirements. Option D. Assume that the default configurations of IBM Case Foundation v5.2 are compliant with UK data protection laws and FCA guidelines, and proceed with implementation without further specific validation. Correct answer is B. Design the Case Foundation v5.2 solution to collect all available customer data points to provide a comprehensive client profile, and rely on standard security features of the platform to protect this data. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in regulatory compliance within financial services, balancing the need for efficient data processing with the stringent requirements for data privacy and security. The professional is tasked with implementing a new IBM Case Foundation v5.2 solution that will handle sensitive customer information. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the system's design and operation adhere strictly to the relevant regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, FCA regulations, and relevant data protection laws like the UK GDPR. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive assessment of data handling processes within the Case Foundation v5.2 solution against regulatory mandates. This includes identifying all personal data, understanding its lifecycle collection, processing, storage, deletion, and implementing appropriate technical and organizational measures to safeguard it. Specifically, this means ensuring that data minimization principles are applied, access controls are robust, and audit trails are maintained to demonstrate compliance. This approach aligns with the FCA's principles of treating customers fairly and maintaining market integrity, as well as the UK GDPR emphasis on lawful, fair, and transparent processing, data minimization, and accountability. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize system functionality or speed of implementation over regulatory requirements. For instance, implementing a solution that collects more data than necessary for the stated purpose violates the data minimization principle under UK GDPR. Similarly, failing to implement granular access controls or adequate encryption for sensitive data would breach the security obligations mandated by both FCA and UK GDPR, potentially leading to data breaches and significant reputational and financial damage. Another failure would be to assume that standard, out-of-the-box Case Foundation configurations are inherently compliant without specific validation against the organization's regulatory obligations. This oversight neglects the principle of accountability, which requires demonstrable compliance. professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to regulatory compliance. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to their operation, identifying potential compliance gaps in proposed solutions, and implementing controls to mitigate those risks. A key decision-making process involves a thorough impact assessment of the case foundation V5. 2. Implementation on data privacy and security, engaging with legal and compliance teams early in the design phase, and continuously monitoring and auditing the system's adherence to regulations post-implementation. Question 11. Process analysis reveals that a new case management workflow is being designed using IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. To handle sensitive customer data. The project team is focused on streamlining the case resolution process and improving user experience. What is the most critical step to ensure this new workflow complies with relevant U.S. data privacy regulations? Option A. Prioritize the functional requirements for faster case resolution and user experience, addressing regulatory concerns only if they become apparent during user acceptance testing. Option B. Delegate the responsibility for understanding and implementing data privacy compliance solely to the IBM Case Foundation developers without direct regulatory guidance. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive review of applicable U.S. data privacy regulations and map each requirement to specific configurations and controls within the IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. Solution design. Option D. Assume that the standard security features of IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. Are sufficient to meet all data privacy compliance needs without further investigation. Correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive review of applicable U.S. data privacy regulations and map each requirement to specific configurations and controls within the IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. Solution design. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to regulatory compliance within the context of IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the implementation of a new case management process adheres strictly to the specified regulatory framework, which in this exam's context is assumed to be U.S.-based, given the exam code's typical association. Misinterpreting or overlooking specific regulatory requirements can lead to significant legal repercussions, financial penalties, and reputational damage. The need for a specialist to interpret and apply these regulations accurately to a technical solution like IBM Case Foundation is paramount. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the relevant U.S. regulatory framework, e.g., HIPAA for healthcare, SOX for financial reporting, or relevant data privacy laws like CCPA/CPRA if applicable to the case type, and mapping its requirements directly to the design and configuration of the IBM Case Foundation solution. This includes identifying specific controls, audit trails, data handling protocols, and access restrictions mandated by the regulations. The specialist must then ensure that the case management solution is built to meet these explicit requirements, often involving configuration of workflows, business rules, security settings, and audit logging within IBM Case Foundation. This proactive, compliance-by-design approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses the legal and ethical obligations, minimizing risk and ensuring the solution is fit for purpose from a regulatory standpoint. It demonstrates a commitment to lawful operations and data integrity. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to prioritize only the functional requirements of the business without adequately considering the regulatory implications. This fails to meet the fundamental obligation to operate within the law. The regulatory/ethical failure here is negligence and a disregard for legal mandates, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that standard IBM Case Foundation features inherently provide regulatory compliance. While the platform offers robust capabilities, their configuration and application are critical. Relying on default settings without specific regulatory mapping is a failure to exercise due diligence. The regulatory/ethical failure is a lack of specific risk assessment and a passive approach to compliance, which is insufficient when specific legal obligations exist. A third incorrect approach would be to delegate the entire regulatory interpretation to the development team without specialist oversight. While developers implement the solution, they may not possess the nuanced understanding of legal and regulatory frameworks. This leads to a disconnect between the technical implementation and the actual compliance requirements. The regulatory/ethical failure is a breakdown in accountability and a lack of specialized expertise applied to a critical compliance function. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a scenario should adopt a structured decision-making process. First, clearly identify the applicable regulatory framework, based on the industry and nature of the cases being managed. Second, engage with legal counsel or compliance officers to gain a definitive understanding of the regulatory obligations. Third, meticulously map each regulatory requirement to specific features and configurations within IBM case foundation. Fourth, document this mapping and the implemented controls thoroughly for audit purposes. Finally, conduct rigorous testing to validate that the solution meets all identified compliance requirements before deployment. This systematic approach ensures that regulatory adherence is integrated into the solution from inception, rather than being an afterthought. Question 12. Operational review demonstrates that several potential risks have been identified within the IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Environment, ranging from minor configuration oversights to potential data integrity issues. The team is tasked with determining the appropriate level of investigation for each identified risk. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations for effective risk assessment and resource allocation? Option A. Prioritize investigation efforts based on a systematic evaluation of each risk's potential impact and likelihood, allocating more resources to higher priority risks and a more streamlined approach to lower priority ones. Option B. Rely on the subjective judgment of the most experienced team members to determine which risks warrant further investigation. Option C. Conduct a detailed, in-depth investigation for every single identified risk to ensure no potential issue is overlooked, regardless of its perceived severity. Option D. Dismiss any identified risks that do not have readily available quantitative data to support their potential impact. The correct answer is A. Prioritize investigation efforts based on a systematic evaluation of each risk's potential impact and likelihood, allocating more resources to higher priority risks and a more streamlined approach to lower priority ones. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in risk assessment, balancing the need for comprehensive data gathering with the practical constraints of time and resources. The operational review has identified potential risks, but the team is faced with deciding how deeply to investigate each one. This requires professional judgment to prioritize efforts effectively, ensuring that critical risks are not overlooked while avoiding an inefficient allocation of resources on low-impact issues. The challenge lies in the subjective nature of risk assessment and the potential for bias in prioritization. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a structured, risk-based methodology. This means categorizing identified risks based on their potential impact and likelihood of occurrence. A tiered investigation strategy, where high-risk items receive more in-depth analysis and low-risk items receive a more streamlined review, is best professional practice. This aligns with regulatory expectations for a proportionate and effective risk management framework, ensuring that resources are focused where they are most needed to protect the organization and its stakeholders. This approach demonstrates due diligence and a commitment to managing significant threats proactively, which is a core tenet of responsible operational management. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to conduct an equally exhaustive investigation into every single identified risk, regardless of its perceived severity. This is inefficient and can lead to resource depletion, potentially leaving insufficient capacity to thoroughly address genuinely high-impact risks. Ethically, it fails to demonstrate responsible stewardship of organizational resources. From a regulatory perspective, it may not satisfy requirements for a risk-based approach, which often mandates prioritization. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss potential risks based on anecdotal evidence or personal intuition without any systematic evaluation. This is highly subjective and prone to bias, leading to the potential overlooking of significant threats. It violates the principle of objective risk assessment and can result in regulatory noncompliance if critical risks are not identified and mitigated. A third incorrect approach is to solely focus on risks that are easily quantifiable or readily apparent, neglecting qualitative or less obvious risks. This can create blind spots in the risk assessment process. Regulatory frameworks often require consideration of a broad spectrum of risks, including operational, strategic, and compliance risks, not just those that are easily measured. This approach fails to provide a holistic view of the risk landscape. Professional reasoning. Professionals should approach risk assessment by first establishing clear criteria for risk identification and evaluation. This involves defining impact and likelihood scales and a matrix for risk prioritization. The process should then involve gathering relevant data, analyzing it against the established criteria, and documenting the findings. When deciding on the depth of investigation, professionals should ask, what is the potential consequence of this risk occurring, and how likely is it? This question guides the allocation of resources towards the most critical areas, ensuring that the risk assessment is both thorough and efficient, and meets regulatory expectations for a robust risk management program. Question 13. During the evaluation of the risk landscape for an IBM Case Foundation V5.2 implementation, a specialist is tasked with identifying potential threats to data integrity and system availability. The organization operates under strict data protection regulations that mandate a proactive approach to risk management. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for risk assessment in this context? Option A. Prioritizing risks based on a documented assessment of their potential impact and likelihood, ensuring that the most critical threats are addressed first. Option B. Focusing the risk assessment efforts primarily on the risks that are most frequently discussed in industry forums, regardless of their specific applicability or potential impact on the organization. Option C. Deferring a comprehensive risk assessment until after a security incident has occurred, at which point lessons learned can be incorporated into the process. Option D. Conducting a superficial review of all potential risks, aiming for broad coverage but without in-depth analysis of the most significant threats. The correct answer is A. Prioritizing risks based on a documented assessment of their potential impact and likelihood, ensuring that the most critical threats are addressed first. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in risk assessment within a regulated environment, balancing the need for comprehensive risk identification with the practical constraints of time and resources. Professionals must demonstrate an understanding of how to prioritize risks effectively, ensuring that the most critical threats to the integrity and security of the IBM Case Foundation V5.2 implementation are addressed first, in alignment with regulatory expectations for data protection and operational resilience. The correct approach involves a systematic and documented process that prioritizes risks based on their potential impact and likelihood. This aligns with best practices in risk management, which are often implicitly or explicitly required by regulatory frameworks governing data handling and IT systems. By focusing on high-impact, high-likelihood risks, the organization can allocate resources efficiently and demonstrate due diligence in mitigating significant threats. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining compliance and preventing potential breaches or operational disruption. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the most visible or easily quantifiable risks, without considering their actual potential impact on the business or regulatory compliance, would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to overlooking critical vulnerabilities that, while less obvious, could have severe consequences. Such an oversight would likely be viewed as a failure to conduct a thorough risk assessment, potentially violating regulatory requirements for risk management and data security. Another incorrect approach might be to delay risk assessment until a specific incident occurs, which is reactive and fails to meet the proactive requirements of most regulatory bodies. This demonstrates a lack of foresight and a failure to implement preventative measures, which is a significant ethical and regulatory lapse. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to IBM Case Foundation V5.2. This involves identifying relevant data protection laws, industry-specific regulations, and any internal compliance policies. The next step is to define the scope of the risk assessment, clearly outlining the systems, processes, and data that will be evaluated. Subsequently, a structured methodology for risk identification and analysis should be applied, considering both technical and non-technical risks. Crucially, a clear set of criteria for risk prioritization, based on impact and likelihood, must be established and consistently applied. Finally, the outcomes of the risk assessment should be documented, communicated to stakeholders, and used to inform the development of mitigation strategies and ongoing monitoring plans. Question 14. The performance metrics show a consistent increase in the average case resolution time for a specific workflow within IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. While the number of cases processed remains stable, the time taken to close each case has gradually risen over the past quarter. This trend is impacting downstream operational efficiency. What is the most appropriate next step to address this situation? Option A. Initiate a review of the case assignment rules to see if rebalancing workloads among users could alleviate the perceived slowdown, without further investigation into the workflow itself. Option B. Immediately implement a broad system performance tuning initiative across all IBM Case Foundation environments to preemptively address potential underlying infrastructure issues. Option C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the workflow, examining all subprocesses, user interactions, and system integrations to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies contributing to the increased resolution time. Option D. Advise stakeholders that the increased resolution time is an acceptable trade-off for improved data accuracy, as no specific compliance breaches have been identified. The correct answer is C. Conduct a detailed root cause analysis of the workflow, examining all subprocesses, user interactions, and system integrations to identify bottlenecks and inefficiencies contributing to the increased resolution time. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in managing complex business processes within an organization that utilizes IBM Case Foundation. The core issue revolves around interpreting performance metrics and determining the most effective strategy for process improvement. The challenge lies in moving beyond superficial observations to a data-driven, yet strategically sound, approach that aligns with business objectives and regulatory compliance. A key aspect of professional judgment here is understanding that raw metrics, while informative, require context and a deeper understanding of the underlying business processes and their intended outcomes. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a holistic understanding of the process, its impact on business goals, and potential risks. It involves a structured investigation that considers both the quantitative data and qualitative factors, such as user feedback and business impact. This aligns with the principles of continuous improvement and responsible system management, ensuring that changes are not only technically feasible, but also strategically beneficial and compliant with any relevant operational guidelines or internal policies that might be implicitly governed by the exam's focus on IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Incorrect approaches fail by either oversimplifying the problem, focusing on isolated symptoms without addressing root causes, or by proposing solutions that are not adequately validated. For instance, immediately implementing a fix based on a single metric without understanding its broader implications could lead to unintended consequences, disrupting other parts of the case management workflow, or even introducing new inefficiencies. Another incorrect approach might involve delaying action due to a lack of clear direction, which can lead to continued suboptimal performance and potential compliance issues if the process is tied to regulated activities. These failures stem from a lack of rigorous analysis and a departure from a systematic problem-solving methodology. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve 1. Clearly defining the problem and its scope using available performance metrics. 2. Gathering additional context through stakeholder interviews, process documentation review, and system logs. 3. Formulating hypotheses about the root causes of the observed performance. 4. Designing and executing targeted investigations or experiments to validate these hypotheses. 5. Evaluating potential solutions based on their expected impact, feasibility, and alignment with business objectives. 6. Implementing the chosen solution and establishing ongoing monitoring to confirm its effectiveness and identify further areas for improvement. Question 15. Strategic planning requires a comprehensive evaluation of potential architectural approaches for implementing a new case management solution within IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Considering the need for both rapid deployment and long-term sustainability, which of the following approaches best aligns with professional best practices and regulatory considerations for a specialist in this domain? Option A. Prioritize a thorough analysis of business requirements and technical constraints, exploring various IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Architectural patterns and integration strategies to design a scalable, maintainable, and secure solution that balances immediate needs with future extensibility. Option B. Select a single, cutting-edge technology or framework that promises significant innovation, without extensive proof of concept or integration testing, to ensure the solution is perceived as modern. Option C. Focus on implementing the most familiar and readily available technology components to achieve the fastest possible deployment, deferring any architectural considerations or scalability planning to a later phase. Option D. Proceed with a solution based on the preferences of the most vocal technical team members, without formal validation of business needs or comprehensive architectural review. The correct answer is A. Prioritize a thorough analysis of business requirements and technical constraints, exploring various IBM Case Foundation v5, two architectural patterns and integration strategies to design a scalable, maintainable, and secure solution that balances immediate needs with future extensibility. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge in balancing the immediate need for a functional case management solution with the long-term implications of architectural choices. The pressure to deliver quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise scalability, maintainability, and adherence to established best practices, potentially leading to technical debt and increased future costs. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen approach, while addressing current needs, also aligns with strategic business objectives and the principles of robust system design. Correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a thorough understanding of business requirements and technical constraints before committing to a specific implementation strategy. This involves a collaborative effort between business stakeholders and technical teams to define clear objectives, identify potential risks, and evaluate various architectural patterns. By leveraging IBM Case Foundation's capabilities for process modeling, rules, and content integration, and by considering factors like performance, security, and future extensibility, the team can design a solution that is both effective in the short term and sustainable in the long term. This aligns with professional ethics by ensuring responsible use of resources and delivering value that endures. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on rapid deployment, without adequate architectural consideration, fails to uphold professional responsibility. This can lead to a system that is difficult to modify, integrate with other systems, or scale as business needs evolve. Such an approach risks creating a brittle solution that requires significant rework later, negating initial time savings and potentially incurring substantial additional costs. This can be seen as a failure to act in the best interest of the organization by not considering the long-term viability and total cost of ownership. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes a single, unproven technology or pattern without proper evaluation can lead to unforeseen technical challenges and vendor lock-in. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to explore alternative, potentially more suitable, solutions. Professionally, this is unacceptable as it can result in a suboptimal system that does not meet all requirements or is overly complex to manage. A third incorrect approach that neglects to involve key stakeholders in the decision-making process, particularly business users who will interact with the case management system, is also professionally unsound. This can lead to a solution that does not align with actual workflows or user needs, resulting in low adoption rates and dissatisfaction. It represents a failure to communicate effectively and to ensure that the technical solution serves its intended purpose from a user perspective. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Clearly define the business problem and desired outcomes. 2. Gather and analyze all relevant requirements, both functional and non-functional. 3. Identify and evaluate potential architectural patterns and technologies, considering their suitability for the specific problem and the IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Environment. 4. Conduct a risk assessment for each potential approach, considering technical feasibility, scalability, security, and maintainability. 5. Engage all relevant stakeholders, including business users, IT operations, and management, to ensure alignment and buy-in. 6. Document the chosen approach, including the rationale and any trade-offs made. 7. Plan for ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and iteration of the solution. Question 16. Regulatory review indicates that the implementation of IBM Case Foundation v5 2. Must ensure that sensitive customer data within case files is protected from unauthorized access, adhering to strict data privacy and security mandates. During the design phase of a new case management solution, what approach to user access control within IBM Case Foundation best aligns with these regulatory requirements and professional best practices for data protection? Option A. Rely exclusively on network-level security measures to protect sensitive data, assuming that application-level access controls are redundant. Option B. Grant all users within a specific department broad access to all case data, assuming that departmental affiliation implies a need to access all relevant information. Option C. Establish access permissions on an ad hoc, need-to-know basis as cases are processed, without a formal documented RBAC framework. Option D. Implement a granular, role-based access control RBAC strategy that assigns permissions based on the principle of least privilege, ensuring users only have access to data necessary for their defined job functions. The correct answer is D. Implement a granular, role-based access control RBAC strategy that assigns permissions based on the principle of least privilege, ensuring users only have access to data necessary for their defined job functions. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to the implementation of IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. Specifically concerning the handling of sensitive customer data within a case management system. The core challenge lies in balancing the need for efficient case processing and data accessibility with the stringent regulatory requirements for data privacy and security. A failure to correctly implement access controls can lead to data breaches, regulatory penalties, and significant reputational damage. The need for careful judgment arises from the potential for misinterpreting or inadequately applying security policies within the technical implementation of the case management solution. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a granular, role-based access control RBAC strategy that aligns directly with the principle of least privilege. This means that users are granted only the minimum permissions necessary to perform their specific job functions. In the context of IBM Case Foundation, this translates to defining specific roles, e.g., case worker, supervisor, administrator, and assigning permissions to these roles based on the data sensitivity and the user's responsibilities. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses regulatory mandates such as data protection laws, e.g., GDPR if the jurisdiction were EU, or relevant U.S. privacy laws if U.S. jurisdiction were specified, which require organizations to implement appropriate technical and organizational measures to ensure the security of personal data. By limiting access, the risk of unauthorized disclosure or modification of sensitive information is minimized, thereby upholding ethical obligations to protect customer data. Incorrect approaches analysis. Granting broad access to all users based on their department, without specific role differentiation, is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This violates the principle of least privilege and increases the attack surface, making sensitive data vulnerable to unauthorized access by individuals who do not require it for their duties. This could lead to violations of data privacy regulations, resulting in fines and legal repercussions. Implementing a system where access is granted based on a need-to-know basis without a formal documented RBAC framework is also problematic. While the intent might be to limit access, the lack of a structured approach makes it difficult to audit, manage, and enforce consistently. This ad hoc method can lead to inconsistencies, accidental overprovisioning of access, and a lack of clear accountability, all of which are detrimental from a compliance and security standpoint. Relying solely on network-level security measures without implementing application-level access controls within IBM Case Foundation is another critical failure. Network security is a necessary layer, but it does not address the specific access requirements within the case management application itself. Sensitive data within cases could still be exposed to internal users who have network access, but should not have access to that specific data within the application, leading to regulatory noncompliance and ethical breaches. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with this implementation challenge should adopt a systematic decision-making process. This begins with a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory framework and its specific requirements for data access and security. Next, A detailed analysis of business processes and user roles is essential to define appropriate access levels. The implementation should then follow a structured RBAC model, ensuring that permissions are granular and aligned with the principle of least privilege. Regular audits and reviews of access controls are crucial to maintain compliance and adapt to evolving security threats and regulatory landscapes. Documentation of the access control strategy and its implementation is also paramount for accountability and auditability. Question 17. Governance review demonstrates a critical gap in the audit trail for modifications to sensitive case data within IBM Case Foundation v5. 2. The current logging mechanisms do not capture all necessary details of data changes, posing a compliance risk. What is the most appropriate and compliant approach to address this deficiency? Option A. Configure IBM Case Foundation's native audit logging features to capture the specific case properties and events identified as critical by the governance review, ensuring immutability and comprehensive recording of changes. Option B. Implement a manual logging process where case workers are instructed to record all data modifications in a separate spreadsheet or document. Option C. Develop a custom external application to monitor and log changes to the case data, bypassing the built-in audit capabilities of IBM Case Foundation. Option D. Defer the implementation of any remediation until a future system upgrade, as addressing the issue immediately would disrupt ongoing case processing. The correct answer is A. Configure IBM Case Foundation's native audit logging features to capture the specific case properties and events identified as critical by the governance review, ensuring immutability and comprehensive recording of changes. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in enterprise content management, where a governance review identifies a critical gap in the audit trail for case data modifications within IBM Case Foundation. The challenge lies in balancing the immediate need for compliance and data integrity with the operational impact of implementing a solution. The organization must ensure that all changes to sensitive case information are logged comprehensively and immutably, as required by regulatory frameworks. The difficulty arises from the potential for disruption to ongoing case processing, the need for technical expertise to implement the solution correctly, and the cost associated with any remediation. A hasty or incomplete solution could lead to further compliance issues or data loss, while an overly disruptive one could cripple business operations. Careful judgment is required to select an approach that is both effective and practical. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves leveraging IBM Case Foundation's built-in audit logging capabilities and configuring them to capture the specific data modifications identified by the governance review. This is best professional practice because it utilizes the native functionality of the platform, ensuring seamless integration and adherence to the system's design principles. Configuring audit logging to capture relevant case properties and events provides an immutable record of changes, directly addressing the governance gap. This approach is compliant with typical regulatory requirements for data integrity and auditability, as it establishes a clear, verifiable history of data manipulation. It minimizes the risk of introducing external dependencies or complex custom solutions that might be harder to maintain and audit. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on manual logging by case workers. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure because manual processes are prone to human error, inconsistency, and deliberate omission. They do not provide an immutable or verifiable audit trail, failing to meet the fundamental requirements of data integrity and compliance. Another incorrect approach is to implement a third-party logging solution without thorough integration testing and validation against IBM Case Foundation's data model. This could lead to incomplete or inaccurate logging, potential data corruption, or performance issues, all of which are regulatory failures. Furthermore, it bypasses the platform's inherent audit capabilities, creating an unmanaged and potentially unreliable logging mechanism. A third incorrect approach is to ignore the governance review findings and defer remediation indefinitely. This is a direct regulatory and ethical failure, demonstrating a disregard for compliance obligations and data governance principles, which can lead to severe penalties, reputational damage, and loss of trust. Professional reasoning. Professionals facing such a situation should first thoroughly understand the specific regulatory requirements driving the governance review. This involves identifying which data elements and events are critical to audit. Next, they should consult the IBM Case Foundation documentation and best practices for audit logging configuration. A phased implementation approach, starting with a pilot or testing environment, is advisable to validate the solution's effectiveness and minimize operational impact. Communication with stakeholders, including compliance officers and business users, is crucial throughout the process. The decision-making process should prioritize solutions that are integrated, auditable, and maintainable, aligning with both regulatory mandates and the platform's intended use. Question 18. The audit findings indicate that certain user roles within the IBM Case Foundation V5.2 system have access to sensitive customer financial data that is not directly required for their day-to-day case processing tasks. This broad access increases the risk of accidental disclosure or unauthorized use of this information. Which of the following approaches best addresses this audit finding while adhering to data privacy principles and regulatory requirements? Option A. Request that users with broad access manually document all instances where they access sensitive financial data, relying on self-reporting to manage the risk. Option B. Implement granular role-based access controls (RBAC) to restrict user access to only the specific data fields and case types necessary for their defined responsibilities, and leverage data masking techniques for sensitive financial data when it is not actively being processed by authorized users. Option C. Update the system's audit logging to capture all access attempts to sensitive financial data, assuming that increased monitoring will deter unauthorized access. Option D. Remove all sensitive financial data from the IBM Case Foundation system and store it in a separate, disconnected database, requiring manual retrieval for any case processing that necessitates it. Correct answer is B. Implement granular role-based access controls (RBAC) to restrict user access to only the specific data fields and case types necessary for their defined responsibilities, and leverage data masking techniques for sensitive financial data when it is not actively being processed by authorized users. Explanation. The audit findings indicate a potential breach in data privacy controls within an IBM Case Foundation V5 implementation, specifically concerning the handling of sensitive customer information during case processing. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the operational efficiency of case management with the stringent requirements of data protection regulations. The core of the challenge lies in ensuring that the system's design and implementation adhere to the principle of least privilege and data minimization, while also maintaining the usability and effectiveness of the case management solution. The correct approach involves a thorough review and reconfiguration of access controls and data masking within IBM Case Foundation. This aligns with best professional practice by proactively addressing the identified audit findings and ensuring compliance with data privacy regulations. Specifically, implementing granular role-based access controls (RBAC) to limit user access to only the data necessary for their specific tasks, and employing data masking techniques for sensitive fields when they are not actively being processed or displayed to authorized personnel, directly addresses the identified vulnerabilities. This proactive stance demonstrates a commitment to data security and regulatory adherence, minimizing the risk of unauthorized access or disclosure of sensitive information. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the audit findings as minor or to implement superficial changes without a comprehensive understanding of the underlying data flow and access patterns. For instance, simply relying on general user permissions without specific case-level or data field-level controls fails to meet the detailed requirements of data protection. This approach risks regulatory noncompliance, potentially leading to significant fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to disable functionality that relies on accessing sensitive data, even if it is necessary for legitimate business processes, without exploring alternative compliant methods. This demonstrates a lack of understanding of the business requirements and an inability to find a balanced solution. Ethically, failing to adequately protect sensitive data is a breach of trust with customers and stakeholders. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, thoroughly understanding the audit findings and their implications. Second, consulting relevant regulatory frameworks and internal policies to establish clear compliance requirements. Third, analyzing the current IBM case foundation configuration and data handling processes to identify specific areas of noncompliance. Fourth, developing and evaluating potential solutions, prioritizing those that offer robust security and compliance while minimizing disruption to business operations. Finally, implementing the chosen solution with rigorous testing and ongoing monitoring to ensure continued adherence to regulations and best practices. Question 19. Implementation of an IBM Case Foundation v5.2 solution for loan application processing has been completed. During user acceptance testing, it is observed that applications from a specific geographic region, historically associated with a higher rate of loan defaults, are being flagged for manual review at a disproportionately higher rate than other regions, even when other risk factors appear similar. What is the most ethically sound and professionally responsible course of action? Option A. Implement a temporary override for all applications from the identified geographic region, manually approving them to avoid further delays, and plan to investigate the system's behavior at a later date once the initial deployment is stable. Option B. Proceed with the deployment as planned, assuming the system's flagging is based on objective, data-driven risk assessment, and address any potential concerns raised by users or regulators after the system is live. Option C. Adjust the system's parameters to reduce the flagging rate for the identified geographic region without further investigation, aiming to achieve a more uniform distribution of manual reviews across all regions. Option D. Immediately halt the deployment of the solution and initiate a comprehensive review of the training data and algorithmic logic for potential bias, engaging subject matter experts to assess fairness and compliance with anti-discrimination principles before proceeding. Correct answer is D. Immediately halt the deployment of the solution and initiate a comprehensive review of the training data and algorithmic logic for potential bias, engaging subject matter experts to assess fairness and compliance with anti-discrimination principles before proceeding. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge stemming from the potential for bias in automated decision-making within IBM Case Foundation. The core dilemma lies in balancing the efficiency gains of automation with the ethical imperative to ensure fairness and prevent discrimination. The specialist must recognize that while the system is designed to be objective, the data it learns from and the algorithms it employs can inadvertently perpetuate existing societal biases, leading to unfair outcomes for certain groups. This requires careful consideration of the system's design, testing, and ongoing monitoring. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves proactive identification and mitigation of potential bias. This aligns with best professional practices and the spirit of regulatory frameworks that aim to prevent discrimination and ensure equitable treatment. Specifically, it requires a thorough review of the training data for any inherent biases, the implementation of bias detection and mitigation techniques within the case management workflow, and the establishment of a robust monitoring process to identify and address any discriminatory patterns that emerge post-implementation. This approach prioritizes fairness and accountability, ensuring that the IBM Case Foundation solution operates ethically and compliantly. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves relying solely on the perceived objectivity of automated systems without independent verification. This fails to acknowledge that algorithms can inherit and amplify biases present in historical data. Ethically, this is a failure to uphold principles of fairness and non-discrimination. From a regulatory perspective, it could lead to violations of anti-discrimination laws if the system demonstrably disadvantages protected groups. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize speed of deployment over thorough bias testing. While efficiency is a goal, it should not come at the expense of ethical considerations and legal compliance. This approach risks releasing a system that is discriminatory, leading to reputational damage, legal challenges, and harm to individuals. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential negative consequences of biased automated decisions. A third incorrect approach is to assume that a single bias audit at the time of implementation is sufficient. Bias is not static. It can evolve as data changes and system usage patterns shift. Failing to implement ongoing monitoring means that emerging biases may go undetected, leading to sustained discriminatory outcomes. This represents a failure in continuous improvement and proactive risk management, both of which are critical for ethical and compliant system operation. Professional reasoning. professionals should adopt a risk-based approach, anticipating potential ethical and regulatory pitfalls. This involves a multi-stage process. 1. Understand the data. Critically evaluate the data used for training and decision-making. 2. Design for fairness. Incorporate bias detection and mitigation strategies into the system's architecture and logic. 3. Test rigorously. Conduct comprehensive testing that specifically looks for disparate impact on different demographic groups. 4. Monitor continuously. Establish ongoing processes to track system performance for fairness and identify any emerging biases. 5. Establish governance. Define clear roles and responsibilities for oversight and remediation of bias-related issues. Question 20. The audit findings indicate a recurring issue where a specific customer's sensitive personal information is intermittently displayed incorrectly within their case details in IBM Case Foundation V5. 2. The customer is understandably distressed and has contacted support requesting an immediate fix. The support representative has the technical capability to access and potentially correct the data directly, but doing so would bypass the standard data correction and verification workflow, which requires multiple approvals and security checks. What is the most appropriate course of action for the support representative? Option A. Escalate the issue to the security and data governance teams for investigation and resolution, while providing the customer with a clear explanation of the process and an estimated timeline. Option B. Advise the customer that the issue is a known system limitation and that their data cannot be corrected at this time. Option C. Directly access and modify the customer's sensitive data to correct the display error, prioritizing the customer's immediate satisfaction. Option D. Provide the customer with a generic workaround that masks the incorrect data display without actually fixing the underlying data issue. The correct answer is A. Escalate the issue to the security and data governance teams for investigation and resolution, while providing the customer with a clear explanation of the process and an estimated timeline. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the desire to resolve a customer issue quickly and the obligation to adhere to established data privacy and security protocols. The pressure to deliver a positive customer experience can sometimes lead individuals to bypass or shortcut procedures, especially when those procedures seem cumbersome. However, in the context of IBM Case Foundation V5, 2 and its associated regulatory environment, maintaining data integrity and customer privacy is paramount. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes compliance with data handling regulations and internal security policies. By escalating the issue to the security team, the individual ensures that the sensitive data is handled by authorized personnel who are trained to manage such breaches according to established protocols. This upholds the principle of least privilege and ensures that any access or modification of sensitive data is logged and auditable, which is crucial for regulatory compliance and maintaining customer trust. This aligns with the general principles of data protection and security expected within regulated industries. An incorrect approach that involves directly accessing and modifying the customer's sensitive data without proper authorization or oversight is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This action violates data privacy principles, potentially exposing the organization to legal penalties and reputational damage. Bypasses established security controls, creating a vulnerability that could be exploited. Furthermore, it undermines the integrity of audit trails and accountability mechanisms. Another incorrect approach, such as providing the customer with a generic workaround that does not address the root cause of the data display issue, fails to meet the professional obligation to resolve the problem effectively and securely. While it might seem like a quick fix, it leaves the underlying data, integrity, and privacy concerns unaddressed, potentially leading to future issues or a perception of incompetence. This also fails to uphold the duty of care owed to the customer regarding their data. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of organizational policies, regulatory requirements, and ethical obligations. When faced with a conflict, the professional should first identify the core issue and the potential risks involved. They should then consult relevant documentation, such as security policies and data handling guidelines. If the situation is unclear or involves sensitive data, escalation to the appropriate team or supervisor is the most prudent course of action. This ensures that decisions are made with the necessary expertise and within the bounds of compliance, protecting both the customer and the organization.